So another dark episode. It starts with Amma at the small town party, complete with hog chasing. I guess that's kind of like cow tipping, and the party gets shut down. And then we see Amma and Camille have this very interesting, charged conversation. A couple things. One, Amma mentions her friends and says something along the lines of "they'd do anything for me." Now, maybe I've just watched Law and Order SVU too much, but my ears, my detective ears, perked up a little bit at that line. And also when she starts to reframe our perception of Camille and she says, you just couldn't stay away from this town, couldn't you? Something along the lines of you're just drawn to this darkness. And it's interesting, we've always taken everything Camille says about why she got sent by her editor, the perception we have of her mom. We take everything Camille says and everything we see at face value. We don't ever consider that maybe how we're seeing events aren't actually the way events actually are. And I love the line we get, jumping to the very end, when Amma's taunting Camille and says, "You could kill me right here," and Richard, the guy she's flirting with, he still wouldn't be able to crack the case. And I think the point of that was just how wrong guys' perceptions of women can be, especially when they're attracted to them, and how different the actual reality is from this image they construct in their minds, and how much of that applies to us as the audience. How dark could we see Camille get before we'd really start to see her as some kind of predator versus just the protagonist, the victim, and the hero of the story. And then another important scene when we see Richard, the big town detective, arguing with the sheriff about who's to blame, and the sheriff, he thinks it's out of town people, either truckers just passing through or immigrant labor coming in, no one from the town. I think it speaks to the central theme of the show, not just this kind of politeness and see no evil, hear no evil, just being delusional and not seeing the evil right in front of your face, but thinking that the evil is someone else coming in. And you get this theme of these small communities who try to kind of shield themselves away from the evils of the big city, the evils from immigrants coming in, and they don't pay attention to the rot, which is right within their own community, and often not the outcasts. Like we see everyone quick to blame people outside or the outcasts, the people that didn't fit in, but oftentimes the rot and the evil can be the people at the highest echelons and the people that are the most polite and the people that have the best spot in society. And the two primary suspects we see investigated, we see Bobby Nash. So Ann Nash, she was the first girl. She got found a while ago out in the woods. Her dad, we've seen him a couple times now, a lot of anger, a lot of rage. It's interesting, he says definitely a man did this, not a woman. That's the second episode now we've heard someone say that, so I'm thinking definitely they're laying it on a little thick, but it's going to be the opposite of that, and it's going to upend our or at least the town's expectations in that way. And then we see Camille's trying to interview Bobby Nash, the dad, and her mom comes in and says, "Your presence is inappropriate here," or something. You get a sense that for her, Camille, her whole being and just how she lives her life is inappropriate. So she shoos her away, and then Camille goes to investigate the brother, who's emotional and sensitive and crying a lot, and the whole town views that a bit suspiciously. You get the sense that, I think with his outfit, they're trying to show he's the big city guy, kind of doesn't really like the small town, doesn't jive. And Natalie, his sister, she's the one who was found in town. We saw that in episode 1. She's the one who they had the funeral for. We saw her mom speak very passionately at the funeral. We met her dad briefly, and we also saw she kept spiders in her room. She fed them. We hear in this episode she created her own language. So again, it's driving on this point that maybe in some other places, this idea of different is beautiful is more accepted, but in this town especially, anyone who's viewed as different in any way, it's viewed with a lot of suspicion. And when Camille's flirting with Richard, we see he asks her favorite color, favorite ice cream flavor, and favorite season. She says black, coffee, and winter. And it's just funny because every time you see her out in the sun, she looks so pale, so uncomfortable, almost like a vampire in the heat, and she has to wear the long sleeve to cover her scars, and that just makes it even worse. She always looks so uncomfortable outside. And it's interesting, we've seen her waking up always late with the sun shining, and she's always listening to the iPod, always falling asleep with her iPod. And first episode was Led Zeppelin, second episode LCD sound system. I thought they were just trying to make her seem modern and hip, but we get the backstory of the iPod fleshed out. I definitely think it's the same iPod from that girl who she meets at the when she checks herself in for treatment. And I don't know if they were trying to show, because she had this kind of pep talk. Well, I guess it wasn't a pep talk where she asked Camille, "Does it get better?" And Camille's like, "No, not really. You just gotta survive." And I'm not sure if they were trying to make the point that it was kind of Camille blames herself for not being more positive and for not, had she put on a brave face and kind of lied about the world being better than it is, maybe she wouldn't have done what she did. Or is it just making again this point that Camille, whether it's her fault or not, she just seemed to find herself attracted to all this death and destruction. That's four dead, all young women now that Camille has kind of been around, gravitated to. So it's just interesting, very graphic scene there. And then last thing we see at the end, her father, Alan. I think it was stepfather. I think stepfather, but he's always just been so nice and so wise and so stable and just this nice presence. And we see him screaming into his hand, either just because he's tired of holding his tongue so much, or if he has a darkness that he's kind of repressing. So I thought that was an interesting shot, because we haven't really seen Alan get explored too much, but that indicates maybe there's some more layers there we'll see. But really good episode. Again, dark, heavy. I knew it was going to be that going in, but it's even more than my expectations. But I think it's great.